Well, welcome back to Two Pastors and Mike. My name is Corey.
And I'm Shannick.
And we're so glad that you're joining us. I can't believe it. Over the last 2 weeks, we've had the most listens to ever in the history of our podcast. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for sharing. And if you haven't shared on your socials, we'd appreciate it. Send a message to your friends. Hey, listen to this podcast. I think you'd enjoy it. That's redundant, but it is what it is. We appreciate it all.
I do appreciate it. Also, those of you watching on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that you said over the last 2 weeks, we've had the most listens ever. I'm like, who in the world is continuing to listen? It's crazy. But you even told me like we're up to like 11% of our audience is listening from Europe.
Hey, what up, Europe?
Yeah. So if you're listening from anywhere in Europe, we are so appreciative of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
And if you're listening to us near the Netherlands, I will be there in 3 weeks. I'll be all over the country teaching some things with Peter. Big shout out to Peter. We know you listen to it every week. I can't wait to be with you guys, so I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's awesome. So question of the week this week is, what do you find inspiring? Now,
right now,
the reason for this question is it's football season.
It is.
Sports are in full swing. We love this time of year, and our backgrounds are in sports, so we love sports and everything involved with it. So right now, beginning of NFL and college, what is inspiring to you?
Well, not my fantasy football team for sure. Although
don't get me started.
I already love my team and hate my team, and it's only been week one. So I am inspired by my Detroit Lions, baby. We went and shocked the world Thursday night last week. Everybody had us picked as losing to the defending Super Bowl champs, and we went into Arrowhead and we shocked the world. And one of my favorite things was after the game, they were interviewing Dan Campbell, who's the head coach. And I can't remember what the question was, but it was sometimes like, are you shocked that you guys came in here and won? He said his answer.
How surprised are you?
How surprised? Yeah. I can't remember what the question was, but his answer, I remember he goes, we expected to win. We came in here expecting to leave with a W. And I was like, yeah. And if you know anything about Dan Campbell, which most people don't because they're not Detroit Lions fans, you have to be faithful to be a Detroit Lions fan. This is the most expectation I've ever had in the history of my life being a Detroit Lions fan. On paper, we have a very good team. So the expectations are high.
Yeah, you've told me that your expectations are high for the season. And I'm curious, though, has Detroit ever won a playoff game in your lifetime?
I don't think.
You don't know?
They've been to one playoff game in my lifetime.
Okay.
Well, more than that. One playoff game since I've been really following over the last, 10, 15 years. Before the Barry Sanders era. I'm sure they won a playoff game with Barry Sanders, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you. That's bad knowledge. But Dan Campbell, if you haven't watched the Hard Knocks and you like that type of behind the scenes, he's just an awesome guy to follow because they follow the Detroit Lions behind the scenes, and he's just inspiring. He's like, if you don't believe, then catch my belief. I'll make you believe. And I love that type of coaching.
Yeah, I really do love that. Yeah, catch our belief if you don't have it.
Speaking of belief.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, speaking of belief. So what's been inspiring to me is Deion Sanders.
Prime time, baby.
Out at Colorado University. It is so crazy what they're doing right now, and I freaking love it. And just him and his attitude and his aura and what he brings, it's so amazing. But there's this video out about the pregame speech from the first weekend, right before that. And all like summer long, he's talking about how, hey, we coming, like people better be prepared because they're going to be legit. Everybody kind of dismissed him, but right for that game, he has this speech that is just so inspiring. And then he says, we ain't coming no more. And then he stops and his team is like, we here.
Yeah.
We here. And they're just going crazy. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's been so hype and I love it so much. And people, of course, are so creative on the internet. I don't know how they find the time to do all this stuff, but they put this music in the background before it gets to his theme music when he asks for it. And it is so uplifting and inspiring. So every morning I take my son Jude to school, and I've been playing it for him. And like the 3 or 4 minute car ride it takes to get there, we're playing it. And I'm like, we here.
We ain't coming to school no more. We here. Hey, those speeches make me want to go. I've never played football in my life. I'll go to Colorado and suit up right now.
This past week, leading up to game 2, it's been released, all these videos about how this week it was all about it's personal. This is personal.
I know. I've seen those videos.
And it's like, gosh, this is so inspiring. I freaking love it. I just freaking love it.
You want to go try out?
I swear I would just go out there and put my body on the line and just, not be able to walk for a month. Just
for one play.
For one practice. Yeah.
Oh, I can't play football. Well, we've been in a series talking about sevens. Last week we did the 7. What did we do last week? I can't even remember.
7 deadly shoulds.
Oh my gosh. And I should have remembered that because of all the episodes, that was kind of, for me, it was informative.
Yep.
But I got a lot of text messages saying how
Same.
encouraging that was. And so thank you again for those of you that reach out, that enjoy what we have to offer. We're going to be talking today about the 7 tensions in leadership. And we wanted to kind of swing the focus into leadership over the next couple of weeks. We are going to be talking about some leadership things, because we're all in leadership, whether you own a company or not, whether you're a parent or not. You have some area of influence in leadership, whether you're just leading yourself. And so these are tensions that, in my opinion, we all live with, especially us here in the church. And again, any type of leadership that you're in, you have these tensions.
Right. And I came up with these tensions. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago, right before COVID. And I came up with them to take our small group leaders through, because I wanted them to know that you're going to have to get used to living in this tension, leading people, because people, will sometimes show up and then sometimes not. People will follow through with what they say. Sometimes they won't. And there's all kinds of tensions as a leader you got to learn to live in. So we're going to jump in right now. 7 tensions in leadership. I'll take odds, you take even, and we'll kind of go back and forth with this. But the first tension that we live in leadership is the tension between excellence versus development. Mm-hmm. Excellence versus development. And this is a tension that I love talking about as a leader, because it's one of the things that I really have to put into practice in my own life, because I do want everything that I'm a part of to be done in excellence. But what I realized is things getting done in excellence, I was having to do most of those things. I've had the experience in it. I've had the time put in. I've had the knowledge or whatever. So I would take on a lot, but I know me doing it and getting it done, that it would get done in excellence. Well, if I'm doing it all, that doesn't leave a lot of room for other people to step in and develop so that they're able to do what I do. Now, a part of this is because I, have that thing that I've been struggling with, and I've mentioned it on this podcast, in imposter syndrome, where I kind of love to be looked at as a Superman that can do it all and do it well. But I realize that's not building a healthy team. That's not creating a healthy culture. And so I had to get to a place where I live in this tension. Okay, yes, I want things to be done in excellence, but I also have to offer development for people, even if it isn't done in excellence, or even if sometimes people fail in what I give them to do. I need to allow that process so that people on the team and people that I'm leading can develop, so that they themselves can be incredible leaders. So this is this tension that you'll have to navigate. There will be times where, hey, this is one of those things that I need to step in, I need to do, or I need to delegate it to one specific person I know will get it done in excellence. Or, hey, these are the times and these are the opportunities I'm going to give to others so that they can develop. And you'll have to live in that tension, knowing when to do it and when to not. And this is a tough tension to navigate, especially in the church world, because a lot of what is visible and what is seen to people or through the community is just our Sunday morning services.
Right.
And so
like 10% of what we do.
I know, right? That's just a part. It's not the pinnacle, but it's what's seen and most visible. And so, okay, there's an element of, hey, this has to be done in excellence. But if you're not allowing other people opportunity on your team or people in the congregation to step up and to be a part of it, how are they ever going to develop?
Right.
And it's one of those tensions, especially around like preaching and teaching. You have one or two people that normally preach and teach in a church community, but there could be a lot more. They've just never had the opportunity to develop. And here we only have Sunday morning services. There's not other, Sunday night or Wednesday night or other real teaching, preaching opportunities. But I just made it a point in the very beginning that it's not going to be one man and a mic. I've developed a team, even if at times people weren't as good as a communicator or would have done it in excellence. Like I know I could have done it, but I gave everybody those opportunities and gave a plethora of people. And we have a healthy team of like 5 or 6 plus now of people that can step on stage, have full confidence because I've continued to give them opportunity to develop, and they have more than met my expectation. They've exceeded it. And now a lot of people, and I would say even including yourself, have become better communicators and do it in a more excellent way than even I can do it, and which I love. Now, I'm not saying I'm not a good communicator.
Wow, that was
my
nice.
focus,
That was a really nice thing.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. My focus though is on other areas. Like it's not something that I like not that I don't care about it.
You just don't enjoy
I
it as
just
much.
don't have a focus on it that
Yeah.
much because I'd rather be doing other things in the community and in the church world.
Which you're really good at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
So
And
anyway, there's
as
this tension.
as the leader, you'll have to live in this tension, even in the world of, okay, if you don't provide people opportunities to develop, you could be looked at as that jerk. And then if
Yeah,
there's a
control
standard,
freak.
a control freak, and then on the other flip side of that is if you do give people a development, but you're just a jerk in how you develop because you have an unrealistic expectation, and usually that's around time, is you expect certain people to develop quicker because you might have developed quicker, and then you want them to be excellent in the spotlight within a month or 6 months or whatever, and it's just not a fair expectation to have on people. You're also going to not really be developing people. So as the leader, you'll have to live in this tension, but you also have to live like in this tension personally. You'll also have to live in that tension with how you develop and making sure you're not pushing people quicker because your expectation is unrealistic.
Yeah,
So
love that.
the
What's next
second one is focused versus flexible. Now, this could be in terms of curriculum, things that you're teaching. It can be a program. It can be a Sunday morning. It can be for the church setting. It can be how you develop your team in your workspaces
with your kids.
It could be parenting. This is
Yes.
It could be your family plan. It could be
Especially.
your program within your work area. Again, you have to be flexible. Now, I do believe in being focused and having a plan, but those plans rarely happen exactly like we expect them to. In fact, my youth pastor growing up, Jack Shanegian, big shout out. Whenever we would go on mission trips, the first session, he'd be like, all right, everybody has a new middle name, and your middle name is flexible. And then just like Deion Sanders, we would repeat it over and over again because he wanted people to understand, yes, we have a plan for the week. We're going to do this project. We're going to build these homes. But things are going to happen that are going to jack up our plan, and you have to be flexible, and you can't let it shake your attitude because we're here to serve. And I've kind of adapted that mentality. Even with, I told Harrison right before we pressed record, I said, hey, what's your middle name? And he told you flexible.
Yeah, flexible.
Because
I heard it.
this is what I teach people, especially even in the student ministry world, is we have a plan for the evening, but it never goes according to plan. So be flexible. And this is even true specifically when you're teaching either a curriculum or a program, is if the conversation gets off topic or goes in an opposite direction, you have to be okay with that if it's going to be helpful with the people. And so being flexible is that tension that in my opinion, is one of the most important tensions to live in leadership, so that you're not dogmatic and you allow the conversation to flow, or you allow people to do things differently than you would.
Yeah, and I know this is something, again, I struggle with. I love developing a plan, and when that thing doesn't go according to the plan,
Which it never does.
yeah, like I get frustrated, and I'm not very flexible. So this is an area that I need to grow in that tension. Number 3, the third tension in leadership is growth versus grace. Now, for me, I always tend to err on the side of grace, but doing so sometimes is detrimental to the growth of people. And you have to sit in this tension between the two. And I'm going to focus not so much on the grace side, but on calling out the growth side in people. And it's a term we actually learned over the last few years. It's called fragilize. Now, when you fragilize someone, it means that you're treating them like they're very fragile, or that they're going to fall apart, or they're going to crumble if you were to confront or address something, or to be stern or whatever. So then you shy away, you don't confront, you just let them keep failing, or you let them keep not performing the way you need them to, or the way they could perform. So it's called fragilizing them. And it's something you do not want to do. There are times to see growth in people. You need to set a standard. You need to call them out when they don't meet that standard. You need to be able to have those, confrontational conversations. Now, I'm throwing this out there and I'm being confident in it like I do this, but I don't.
You've done better.
Yeah. Well, I have gotten better in it for sure, but I still have a long way to grow in it. Like I said earlier, I do always just tend to err on the side of grace, but not addressing someone's lack of growth. Is that really showing grace or not?
Yeah, it's not.
I'm not thinking it is.
Yeah.
And so for me, I got to navigate and live in that tension. Okay. Again, all this comes back to conversation too, continual conversation with the people you're leading, because they might be going through something. There might be external factors you don't know about. So whenever you stay in tune with that and have those conversations, maybe you are more adept to offer grace in those areas where you need to, but then also knowing when to call someone out as well.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of that growth versus grace, as the leader, you have to also recognize that there are some people that just don't want to grow, and you've been giving grace and you've been challenging, and they just don't want to grow. And it's that famous phrase, you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. And so you have to adapt to your team and involved in your team to recognize, okay, this isn't even a growth or a grace tension. I just need to move on. Like you said, I need to have a confrontational conversation. It's just not working out. And that's overall, that will help the growth of your company. And that is being gracious, because you're not fragilizing that person.
And it'll help them grow too, because maybe it'll be a wake-up call they need.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. The fourth one is specifics versus styles. And again, this is as the leader being in tune to your team's personalities. I know we talked about it a couple weeks, is taking personality tests. We really encourage that. We've done the DISC profile, which you got angry about over the last couple weeks because you found out you were different. You changed.
I changed somehow.
Which is good. You didn't change somehow. You changed because you're growing. Hello, somebody. Okay. But also like the Enneagram, understanding how people develop in whatever area you oversee them in.
Yeah.
You have to understand you might like it a specific way. And if you want that specific task to be done a specific way, you have to communicate that. But I also understand is some people will do things different according to their style. And oftentimes when they're like really good people in terms of like development and they provide really good things, they do it better than I could do it. It just looked drastically different. And during the process, I'm like, oh, man, this is not going to be great. And then bam. And it's like, wow, I would have gone about it so much differently, but you did it better. And so understanding the difference between specifics and styles, because people learn different than us. You know, I have to visually see something to learn. That's why I always sat in the front row of school. I was talking about this with my wife last night. It's like, as a student, I was very diligent. I know I'm pretty crazy, but I liked to learn. I have to be able to visually see it. And so you can change the setting and the way that you do the group each time. It doesn't always have to look exactly how, you know, I'm leading this class in October. The class in the spring, based on the class in October, I could do things a little bit different because things didn't work. And I have to be flexible with that, or maybe not teach something I'm really passionate about because it didn't land.
But, or you're going to have a whole new set of people and you're going to have to learn their style because what didn't work the first week, and then you're going to change it all up for the next one. Maybe it would have worked better to keep it the same.
There's that tension.
Yeah, that's
a
the
good
tension.
Perspective.
It is the tension.
Yeah.
And I know for me, leading, you can have, this is how I like to differentiate this, specifics versus styles. You can have, say, a job description, but how people approach getting that task done and that job description done might look a little bit different, what you were saying. And so just to live in that tension, to be okay with that. The fifth tension in leadership is persistence versus patience. We want people to be consistent and persistent on whatever it is that they're doing. But again, this goes back to, I feel like a lot of these go back to the first one, excellence versus development, especially this one, but allowing patience in the process. Really is key. And again, it goes back to knowing all the things before, the style or what's specific, offering grace or when to grow. But that's this same kind of thing, just in a little bit different area, because what we're talking about is really timelines with this, because two people might not be on the same learning curve with things. And they might still be an incredible employee, or once they catch up, maybe they'll go beyond some of our current people in our teams or the people that we're leading, but we didn't allow them patience to get there. And so again, it's setting in that persistence versus patience, like dichotomy, and being okay with that and figuring out when to step in and push or when to step in and offer patience.
Yeah. And in our specific setting, specifically around the conversation of theology, this is a tension we've had to live in is, okay, am I going to be persistent about this specific hill? I'm going to die on this hill. And which hills do I need to be a little bit more patient? And in one of the best leadership principles we learned several years ago was learning to turn the ship slow enough so people don't fall off. Because we might have had this revelation for 5 years and debated it, talked about it, struggled with it. And then we present it to the church and they're just not yet ready for it. And we're like, we're going to die on this hill. And then all of a sudden, you know, you lost half your church because they weren't ready to have that conversation. And so I think that tension of learning to turn the ship slow enough so people don't fall off is how do you slowly bring these conversations up so people aren't startled based on where you are theologically in certain conversations. And I think that's really good tension to live in, but you have to be careful and you have to really think, okay, am I going to die on this hill or am I not? And what is worth it? And how then do I steer the conversation slowly so that people are open to the conversation and open to the relationship and open to where you're at and where you landed on certain topics?
Yeah, that's good.
So the sixth one is tactical versus strategical. And I actually had to look this up. I thought it was very interesting because I thought they're very similar, but the strategy is the plan of where you want to go. The tactics are the individual steps and actions that actually get you there. And I think the perfect illustration is Ocean's 11, the movie.
Oh, yeah.
They have this strategy on how they're going to rob the casino. But then the whole movie is about how none of the strategies work out according to plan, and they all have to use tactics individually. Now, the end goal was the same. They still robbed the casino, and it's a very entertaining movie. But the tactics all changed throughout the movie, and it was very interesting. And I think that's really a great illustration of our lives, is you can have a strategy for your company. You can have a strategy for your life. You can have a strategy for your parenting. But what are the individual steps, the tactics that you're going to use when you wake up and your kids are driving you insane and you said you weren't going to give them screens and all of a sudden they've had 3 hours of screens on the day? That happened yesterday.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I know for me in this tactical versus strategical, it's like there's two types of leaders. Either you're like this big visionary type person that likes to cast it out, but you don't necessarily take the steps or the time to walk through to get there, or you're a leader that, hey, give me the big task, tell me what it is, and I'll figure out all these little steps to get there. I tend to find myself in that second category. I'm not a big vision caster or anything like that. But give me what it is you want accomplished, and then I'll set the tactics up to get there. And I love getting stuff done, right? Everybody around here, I think, knows me and calls me GSD. I've said stuff like that before, and you're like, no one calls you that, but people do call me Mr. GSD.
Hold on, I need to confront you for a second. You just said you're not a visionary, but you just laid out one of the greatest visions of Hill City Church in the history of the 40 years.
Well, I'm getting there. Hold on, I'm getting there.
Did I just screw up your punchline?
Well, yeah, you just.
Well, you said it, and I wanted to confront it.
Because I am that second person. I like to take the steps, but this tension that I've been living in is, as a lead pastor, I have to start casting more vision. And so recently, I've done that with this initiative. What we're going to be doing now. I'm starting off even maybe a little bit small, more than what you were thinking. But hey, let's do a home a year the next 3 years, and maybe a multifamily unit year 4. Maybe we'll build our own year 5. But you're thinking, I mean, this is great for now, but I'm seeing like 10 years down the road and 10, 20 houses and all this stuff. And that's great. But now I'm living in the tension of both. And I think that's what I mean by this is you have to be someone who can, as a leader, have some big picture vision, but also be willing to get into the tactical stuff to start walking it out to get there. Because I do know a couple people in my life specifically that are big vision kind of guys. They see things in the spirit, if you will. They see how things are going to be accomplished or how things should be, but then they have no, realness to get people on board and the steps and the patience to walk through the day-to-day, the tactical stuff to get, to move the strategy along to get there.
Before you go to number 7, what you're talking about is the 6 types of working genius, which I can't remember I don't think we've done an episode on this. I know we've mentioned it. I think episode 57 in Knowing Your Saboteurs is, do you remember who created it?
I don't.
Lencioni, I think is what you said.
That sounds familiar.
Patrick Lencioni, I think. 6 types of working genius. It's a really cool thing. He talks about this idea that everybody has a working genius and it's different, but you need all 6 in the room to thrive as a leadership. So you should look that up. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on that in the future, but I think
and we'll
what you're
come
talking
up with
about,
one and add it to our 7 series.
Yeah, there it is. Oh, yeah, because it is 6.
Yeah, so here's the 7th and final tension in leadership that we have. It's the tension between vulnerability versus transparency. And we've talked about this several times on this podcast, what the difference is, but just real quick, a reminder. In transparency, you allow people to see what you want them to see. And so it's easy to maybe open up and be transparent, but only to a certain limit. And we put it under the guise of, hey, I'm just being so transparent with you right now. And we say something, but it's only what we want them to see, maybe not the full story. Whereas vulnerable, you're sharing all of you, all the story, all the details, and you're allowing yourself to be put in a position that feels vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily after the fact. Hey, I've went through all this. Now let me be transparent with what I went through years ago. No, it's, hey, I'm in the middle of it now.
Yeah.
This is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm dealing with. Will you still accept me?
I'm glad you said that, because this tension came about because you confronted me. As communicators, I can tell you a story, and being transparent is good. It still draws people in. But I was saying that I was being vulnerable, and you're like, no, that's not vulnerability because you've already overcome that issue. That's just being transparent. Vulnerability. So transparency would be like, yeah, I used to struggle with porn. No, vulnerability would be like, hey, I actually am still struggling with porn and I need some help. And that's the different there. And I think it's beautiful. Yes, transparency is being good, but you got to find your safe people that you're only, we're not saying be vulnerable with everybody.
Yeah, that's why this is a tension.
Yeah.
Vulnerability versus transparency, because you can't just be vulnerable with every single person.
Right.
Now, it will draw people in. It won't push people away. And I know Brene Brown does a lot of work in this area, and you can look up a lot of stuff on vulnerability that she puts out. But you can't just be vulnerable with everybody. It has to be safe people. It has to be people that, you know, you trust and know will uplift you, uphold you, see you through that process. You just don't want to be vulnerable with every single person, or even especially the people you lead.
Yeah.
You know, not that you can't, and you can't develop that. I know I've developed that with a lot of people here. I'm able to be vulnerable with almost everyone that's on staff and that works closely with me. But you do have to be careful. So living in that tension, when to be vulnerable, when to not, when to just be transparent. That's what you have to live in as a leader.
That's really good.
Figuring that out.
I just watched a documentary this past weekend called The Work. It's about people that go into prisons where people are on death row and they spend 4 days, and it's very emotional and they're dealing with traumas, and it's really interesting. If you're interested in that, you should go watch that. But the 7 tensions of leadership, again, were excellence versus development, focused versus flexible, growth versus grace, specifics versus styles, persistence versus patience, tactical versus strategical, and vulnerability versus transparency. And we'd like to know, either in the comments below when this gets posted, or email us or text us, is what's a tension that we missed? What's a tension you live in leadership? We are very curious about the tensions you live in.
Yeah, absolutely. So please take us up on that. We would love to hear another tension that you live in as a leader. And who knows, maybe we'll make a podcast on just that one down the road. But we want to hear how this episode has really either blessed you or challenged you. Let us know that as well. Reach out to us, Shannock or Corey at hillcity.tv. You can email us or put it in the comments when it's posted on socials. We want to hear from you. Yeah. And just know, with that, you are loved and there's nothing you can do about it.